It started with the smallest noise, like a breath too loud, a whisper that didn't belong in the room. Lila stood in front of her bathroom mirror, brushing her teeth, half awake, eyes puffy from sleep. The room was quiet, except for the slow humming of the ceiling fan and the sound of her toothbrush moving. She rinsed her mouth, wiped her face with a towel, and glanced up at the mirror. That's when she heard it. A faint gasp. But it didn't come from her. She froze. Her eyes scanned her reflection. Nothing unusual. The mirror showed her messy bun, sleepy eyes, oversized hoodie, same cream walls behind her, same lavender towel hanging from the rack. But the sound didn't leave her mind. It felt like it had come from right in front of her, but through something. She leaned in, pressing her fingers against the cool glass. Silence. Lila shook her head. "Get a grip," she muttered, turning off the light and heading to bed. The first night, she told herself she imagined it. The second night, the sound was louder. She was washing her face this time, bent over the sink. When she stood up and looked in the mirror, she heard it again. This time it was clearer, a whimper, high-pitched, almost like a child in pain. She whipped around. Nothing. Her apartment was small, just a studio with one bedroom, and she lived alone. No roommates, no pets, and definitely no kids. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. She opened her camera and pointed it at the mirror. Maybe it was one of those haunted stories where cameras caught what eyes couldn't. But no, just her reflection, plain as always. "Sleep," she whispered, switching off the lights again. But her eyes didn't close so easily this time. By the third night, she started locking the bathroom door. It didn't make sense. How do you lock something out that's already inside? That night, she didn't go in at all. She brushed her teeth at the kitchen sink and refused to look into anything reflective. Her phone screen, the darkened microwave, door, the windows, they all made her nervous, but mirrors were everywhere. She couldn't avoid them forever. On the fourth night, she dreamt of her. It was blurry at first, but slowly, a face began to form. Pale skin, hair dripping wet like she had just come out of a storm, eyes wide and terrified. The girl in the dream stood behind the mirror, pounding on the glass, her mouth open in a silent scream. Lila couldn't move. She just watched, heart pounding while the girl mouthed something again and again. "Let me out, please let me out." She woke up soaked in sweat, the echo of the scream still ringing in her ears. Her hands were shaking as she reached for her phone. 3:47 a.m. She hadn't set an alarm. Why had she woken up at that exact moment? She didn't want to, but something pulled her out of bed. Her bare feet touched the cold floor and the hallway felt darker than usual. She moved toward the bathroom. Her heart thudded like a drum in her chest. The door was locked. She hadn't gone in. She knew she hadn't, but the light was on. She stood there frozen, staring at the yellow light slipping out from under the door. Slowly, the doorknob began to move, just a little, back and forth like someone was trying to open it from the inside. Lila stumbled back. "No, no, no," she whispered. Then it stopped. The light went out. Dead silence. She couldn't sleep. For the rest of the night. The next morning, she called her mom. She needed comfort even if she didn't know what to say. She didn't mention the mirror or the voice or the dream. Just said she was feeling off. Her mom sounded distracted. "That's weird, honey. You know, do you still have that mirror? The one from Grandma's house?" Lila blinked. "Yeah, why?" There was a pause. Her mom lowered her voice. "I never told you this, but your grandmother used to say that mirror was cursed. She swore someone was trapped inside, used to scream at night. We always thought it was just her dementia." Lila felt her stomach twist. "What do you mean, trapped?" "I don't know. She said the mirror didn't reflect you. It watched you. And sometimes, if it liked you, it let you hear her." Lila's blood went cold. She turned her head slowly toward the bathroom. Something was watching her, through the mirror. Lila couldn't sit still after the call. Her hands kept fidgeting, and she found herself glancing toward the bathroom every few seconds like it might open on its own. The mirror had always been just a mirror, an old, slightly cracked thing with a heavy wooden frame. Her grandmother gave it to her when she moved into her first apartment. "Every girl needs a good mirror," she'd said with a wink. Lila used to think it was sweet. Now she wasn't so sure. She thought about getting rid of it, just yanking it off the wall, tossing it in a dumpster somewhere far away. But something stopped her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. Like if she moved it, something worse would happen. That night, she covered it with a bedsheet, tucked the corners tight. Then she taped a big cardboard box over it for good measure. Out of sight, out of mind. Maybe whatever was happening would stop if she stopped looking. She managed to fall asleep just before midnight. But the scream woke her. It didn't come from inside the mirror this time, it came from the hallway. Lila jolted upright, heart slamming into her ribs. The scream had been raw, filled with panic, like someone was being ripped apart. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking, and crept toward her bedroom door. The hallway outside was dark, but she could see the bathroom door. It was wide open. She had closed it. She remembered closing it. The sheet she had taped over the mirror now lay in a heap on the floor. The cardboard box was split down the middle, torn like someone had clawed through it. The mirror was bare, and it was glowing. Not with any light she could explain. It was subtle, a faint shimmer just under the surface, like something was moving behind the glass, too deep to see clearly but enough to feel. Then she saw her, the girl from the dream. She was back. Only this time, she wasn't screaming. She stood in the mirror with her head tilted to the side, watching Lila. Her eyes were wide and hollow, her lips moving silently. Her skin looked almost translucent now, stretched too thin over bones that didn't sit right. Lila's breath caught in her throat. The girl raised her hand slowly and touched the inside of the mirror, and a crack spread across the surface, from where her fingers touched, all the way down to the bottom. Lila gasped and backed away, slamming the bathroom door shut and throwing herself into her bedroom. She pressed her back against the wall and stared at the floor. No. No, no, no. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It only said, "She knows you see her now." She didn't sleep. She barely moved. The next morning, she drove to a church. She wasn't even religious, hadn't stepped into one in years. But something told her she needed help from someone who'd seen strange things before. She found a priest, an old man with tired eyes who looked like he'd seen far too much in one lifetime. She told him everything. The mirror, the voice, the dreams. To her surprise, he didn't laugh. "You're not the first to say something like this," he said quietly. "Objects can hold energy, pain, especially if something happened around them. Mirrors in particular. They've been called gateways, traps. Some say they're eyes between worlds." Lila leaned forward. "How do I close it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood up, walked into the back, and returned with a small vial of holy water, a silver crucifix, and a black book that looked like it had been through hell itself. This might help. But sometimes the mirror doesn't want to let go. He handed her a folded paper, a prayer in Latin. "Say this, pour the water along the edges, and whatever happens, don't break eye contact." That night, Lila lit candles around the mirror. She followed the instructions. Holy water dripping, voice trembling, eyes fixed on the girl inside. And for a while, it worked. The girl backed away. The shimmer faded, the glass calmed, until Lila blinked. In that second, the girl lunged at the glass, screaming louder than ever, and the mirror shattered, a web of jagged shards exploding outward. One piece sliced Lila's arm, and she stumbled back, screaming. Blood dripped onto the floor, and through the broken glass something began to crawl out. Blood soaked the sleeve of Lila's hoodie as she stared at the broken mirror. The pieces lay scattered across the floor, glittering like deadly ice. But that wasn't what froze her in place. It was the movement. Something was sliding through the mirror frame. Slow, deliberate, unnatural. Thin fingers, impossibly long, stretched out from the shattered edges like they had no bones. They clawed into the wooden frame, pulling the rest of the figure forward. The girl, or whatever was left of her, was crawling out. Her eyes were pitch black now, no whites at all, just endless voids that didn't blink. Her mouth hung open in a scream, but no sound came out anymore. It was worse that way, like her horror had gone beyond noise. Lila didn't wait to find out what happened next. She ran. Out of the bathroom, out of the apartment, barefoot and bleeding. She didn't care. She took the stairs two at a time and didn't stop until she was outside, gulping the cold night air like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The street was empty. No people, no traffic, just the flickering streetlights, and her own gasps echoing off the concrete. She dialed 911 with shaking fingers, pressing the phone to her ear. It rang, and rang, and rang, then silence. No operator, no message, just quiet. She pulled the phone away and stared at the screen. No signal, no service. It was 2025. How was there no service in the middle of the city? Lila looked up and noticed something worse. The streetlights weren't just flickering. They were going out one by one in a perfect line, coming closer to her. Something was coming. She backed away, her legs trembling. "This isn't real," she whispered. "It's a dream. It has to be." But it wasn't, because when she turned to run again, she saw a shadow standing under the last working light. It was her, the girl from the mirror. Only now, her face was wrong. It was stretched too wide, her mouth splitting into something that wasn't human. Her fingers dangled to her knees, black with rot. And her eyes, they glowed, like embers in a dying fire. She didn't move, but she was staring straight at Lila, and smiling. Lila turned and ran every step like dragging herself through glue. She didn't even know where she was going, just away. Her apartment was no longer an option. Nowhere felt safe. Not even the church. She ducked into a nearby gas station. The door chimed overhead, the sound echoing too loud. The place was empty. No cashier, no customers. Just rows of snacks and flickering security monitors behind the counter. Lila rushed to the bathroom in the back and slammed the door shut. But the mirror was waiting for her. She should have known. This one was bigger than the one at home. A full-length piece hanging above the sink, dusty and cracked at the edges. For a moment, her reflection stared back at her. Then, it smiled. But Lila wasn't smiling. Her reflection tilted its head slowly, like a puppet on a string. Its lips moved in sync with her thoughts. "Let me finish what was started." The reflection reached toward the glass. Lila stumbled back, knocking into a trash can. "No, stop!" The reflection laughed, an echo of a sound that didn't belong in this world. Then it whispered, "You broke the mirror. You let her out. Now there's no way back." The lights in the bathroom flickered violently. The door creaked behind her. She wasn't alone anymore. When she turned around, the girl was standing in the stall doorway. No blood, no footsteps, just standing there. But this time, her face was Lila's exactly, same eyes, same mouth, same cut on the arm. Lila's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she whispered. The girl tilted her head and spoke in Lila's own voice. "I'm you. The part you buried. The part that screamed every night and no one heard." The mirror behind them cracked again. Lila took a step back and hit the sink. Her reflection was gone. Only darkness stared back at her now. Lila couldn't move. Her back was pressed so tight against the sink that the porcelain edge cut into her spine. The girl, or the thing, who looked like her, kept staring with that blank, eerie calm. No expression, no movement. Just stillness, like a doll standing too long in the wrong place. The silence made it worse. The buzzing lights above flickered once, then steadied. No sound except the dripping tap and the wild pounding of Lila's heart. "I'm not you," Lila finally said, voice cracking. The girl's lips curled just slightly. Aren't you? Then she stepped forward. Lila flinched but didn't run. She was too far gone for logic, but some part of her needed answers. Needed to know what this thing was. Why her face had become the mask of something that wasn't human. The girl circled her like a wolf, sizing up prey. Her fingers hovered inches from Lila's arm, never touching, just gliding through the air as if she could feel heat without skin. You cried every night when you were 10, she whispered. Remember that? When no one came. When the door stayed locked. When you stared into your bedroom mirror and begged for someone to save you. Lila's eyes widened. No one knew that. Not her mother. Not her friends. Not even she thought about it anymore. I never said that out loud, Lila said, voice barely a breath. You didn't need to, the girl answered, now behind her. I was born in that silence, in the cracks of your screams. You looked into the mirror and left me there. Lila turned sharply, but the girl was gone. The bathroom was empty again. Only now her reflection had returned, and it was crying. Her own face stared back at her from the mirror, eyes flooded with silent tears. But Lila wasn't crying. Not physically. Not yet. Then the reflection began to pound on the inside of the glass. Thud, thud, thud. Lila backed away, the sounds vibrating in her skull. She ran from the bathroom, her breath catching in her throat, not even caring if the cashier saw her. But the store was still empty. The aisles were darker than they had been just minutes ago. The exit sign flickered like a dying pulse. She ran out into the street. The whole block was dead. Cars sat still with doors wide open. Streetlights had gone completely black. Windows in every building were shattered, like a silent war had passed while she was trapped in the gas station. And then she realized something even worse. There was no sound, no wind, no cars, no distant humming of life. Just complete, choking silence. She was alone, or supposed to be. Because when she turned, she saw people. Sort of. They lined the sidewalk like statues. Men, women, children, all frozen mid-motion, all facing mirrors, some standing in front of windows, others in front of rear-view mirrors on broken cars, some even holding broken hand mirrors close to their faces. And all of them were screaming. But there was no sound. Just mouths open wide, jaws stretched unnaturally far, eyes bulging, faces twisted in agony. Lila stumbled back and almost fell. She turned to run and slammed right into someone, or something, hands gripped, her shoulders hard like claws digging through her skin. She looked up and saw herself again. But this version of her was wrong in every way. Her face was twitching, jaw trembling like she was trying to contain something inside. Her eyes were full black now, seeping darkness from the corners. Her clothes were soaked like she'd crawled through a swamp of rot. You let me out, the thing said. I didn't mean to, Lila screamed. The creature leaned in so close she could feel the cold air of its breath. Meaning doesn't matter. Mirrors only show the truth, and the truth is, I'm stronger now. Then it whispered, in her ear, and you're not the only one with reflections. Suddenly, behind her, every frozen person on the sidewalk moved, all at once. They turned their heads, snapped out of their trance, and looked directly at Lila. But they weren't looking with their own eyes anymore. Each one had her face, twisted. Smiling, screaming without sound, they began to walk toward her, slow, in sync, like puppets dragged by invisible strings. Dozens of versions of her, each slightly wrong, some burned, some wet, some broken. Her mind cracked. She turned and ran, tears blurring her vision, blood soaking her sleeve again. The world had gone mad, and the mirrors had all come to life. Lila didn't know how long she ran. Streets blurred past her, the sounds of her own footsteps echoing too loud in a city that no longer breathed. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but none of it mattered. Behind her, the crowd of her twisted reflections kept coming. Not running. Just walking. Always walking. But no matter how far she went, they were never far behind. They didn't speak, didn't groan like zombies or growl like monsters. They just watched her, like they were waiting. The world around her had gone gray. Not just silent now, but colorless. The sky was ash. The buildings had turned to stone. Even the trees looked hollow, like someone had painted the idea of life but forgotten to add the life itself. She finally stopped in front of a broken-down bookstore, the kind her grandmother used to love. The windows were cracked, the door slightly ajar. No lights inside. Still, it felt different, like it hadn't been fully touched by whatever this was. Lila slipped inside, closing the door behind her and dragging a shelf in front of it. She slumped to the floor, pressing her head to her knees. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She was breaking. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. "You're waking up." The voice didn't come from the room. It came from inside her head. Lila looked up sharply. No, not again. She glanced around the store, books scattered everywhere, dust thick in the air. A mirror hung crooked behind the front counter. A small one, probably once used by the cashier to sneak glances at customers. Now it was lit from within. Faintly. Just enough to call to her. Lila approached slowly. Her reflection was already there waiting, but it wasn't her anymore. It was the other her, the one with the black eyes and jagged smile. The thing that had been crawling out since the first night. "Why me?" Lila asked, her voice barely a whisper. The reflection tilted its head. "Because you're hollow. You've always been hollow. I'm not. You are. You just forgot." The mirror never did. Lila gripped the counter. "I don't understand." The reflection smiled wider. "You were the first. The very first to scream. Long before you were even born. You don't remember the others. But I do." Lila's breath hitched. "What do you mean the first? You think this is your life? That you're some girl with trauma and a haunted mirror?" The reflection laughed. "You are the scream, the original echo, the first soul that begged to be heard and was trapped instead. No. You didn't inherit the curse, Lila," it said, voice now distorting. "You are the curse." Suddenly the glass cracked. A thin split ran through the reflection's face. Behind it, for just a second, Lila saw something else. Thousands, no, millions of mirrors, stacked in an endless void, and in each one, a different version of her. Some sobbing, some silent, some screaming so violently their mouths tore apart. And at the center of it all, her floating, lifeless, eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a permanent scream, it was her true self. The scream that never stopped. Lila stumbled back, knocking into a pile of books. They scattered across the floor, pages fluttering like dead wings. No, that's not real, that's not me," she muttered, crawling away from the counter. But the mirror kept glowing. The bookstore lights flickered to life one by one, humming softly, and then she heard it. Not a scream, a song, a soft lullaby. One she hadn't heard since she was a child. Her grandmother's voice, sweet and shaky, humming her to sleep during the worst nights. It wrapped around her like a memory, like warmth she thought was gone. She looked up. The mirror had changed again. Her grandmother stood there now, alive, smiling gently, holding out her arms. "Come back," she whispered. "It's okay now. You can come back." Lila reached toward the mirror slowly. Tears welled in her eyes. "I missed you," she whispered. But just as her fingers touched the glass, her grandmother's face twisted into something else. Her eyes rolled back, jaw unhinged, black blood pouring from her mouth. The reflection laughed in Lila's voice. "Got you." The mirror exploded. Shards of glass ripped through the air like bullets. One piece slashed across Lila's cheek and she fell back screaming, blood pouring from her face. The reflections were done waiting. They had found her again. Lila didn't know how long she lay there half-conscious, blood seeping from the gash on her face. The world around her pulsed like a wound, throbbing with something unseen, something alive. The bookstore floor was cold beneath her. She tried to breathe steady, to push down the rising panic, but she couldn't stop shaking. Every mirror she had ever looked into, every reflection she had trusted, it all felt like a lie now. They hadn't shown her who she was. They'd hidden what she really was, or worse, what was really inside her. She forced herself to stand, one hand pressed to the cut on her cheek. Her legs wobbled and her thoughts felt scrambled. But she had one clear goal in her mind. End it. Burn the mirror. Destroy whatever was left. Break the cycle, even if it killed her. She stumbled out of the bookstore into the colorless street. The sky was darker now, almost black like a storm was rolling in. But there were no clouds, no wind, just darkness swallowing everything above. The reflections were gone, for now, but she knew better than to believe she was safe. She made her way back to her apartment. Somehow the streets seemed different, longer, warped, like she was walking through a memory instead of a city. Doors led nowhere, buildings stretched too tall. Street signs shifted when she blinked. It wasn't real, or maybe it was too real. When she reached her building, the lobby was empty, just a broken elevator and the humming flicker of dead lights. She climbed the stairs slowly, her body heavy, like gravity had grown stronger. When she reached her floor, her door was already open. She pushed it wide and stepped inside. The mirror was still there, but not broken, not even cracked. It stood perfectly whole above the bathroom sink, polished clean, as if nothing had ever happened. And in the glass, she saw herself, her real self. No distortions, no glowing eyes, no monster version, just Lila, bruised, bleeding, tired, but her. She walked toward it, every part of her body screaming not to, but she didn't stop. She had to face it, one last time. "Why me?" she whispered again, not expecting an answer. But the reflection responded, not with words, with images. The glass shimmered, and Lila saw herself as a child, alone in her room, crying into a pillow while her parents fought in the other room, screaming silently at the mirror, "Please hear me. Please someone see me." Then, her teenage years, hiding from people, pretending to be okay, smiling in the mirror when no one else was around. Then, adulthood, still carrying it all, still pretending. The mirror hadn't cursed her. It had listened. It had taken everything she buried, the rage, the fear, the pain, and given it form. It made the scream real, and now it wanted to finish the job. Lila reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out the small vial of holy water the priest had given her. It was cracked, half empty, but maybe enough. She raised it high. Her reflection smiled. "Go ahead," it mouthed. Lila didn't hesitate. She hurled the vial at the mirror. It shattered on contact, water exploding across the glass in sizzling drops. The mirror didn't just crack this time, it screamed. The sound ripped through the apartment like a bomb going off inside her skull. She dropped to her knees, covering her ears, but it was useless. The scream wasn't outside, it was in her head. Her own voice amplified 1,000 times over, then silence. Total, crushing silence. Lila opened her eyes. The mirror was gone. Not shattered. Gone. Just an empty wall. She blinked hard, slowly stood, walked to the spot where it used to hang. No glass, no shards, no trace. For the first time in days, she felt light. Like something had been pulled from her chest. A pressure that had been there her whole life. Gone. She sat on the floor and cried. Not out of fear this time. Out of release. But as she wiped her tears away, her phone buzzed. A single notification from the front camera. Motion detected. She stared at the screen, and then she saw it, her own face looking into the lens. But she hadn't moved. Her phone was on the floor, and the reflection in the screen was smiling. Lila stared at her phone like it might bite her. The screen kept replaying. The motion alert, just 2 seconds of footage. Her own face staring into the camera. Still, silent, smiling. But she hadn't moved. She hadn't even picked up the phone. She looked down at it lying on the floor. The front camera still faced upward, catching only the ceiling fan turning slowly. Her real reflection wasn't on the screen anymore, but for a moment, it had been. The panic returned like a punch to the chest. Lila dropped the phone and stumbled, back, pressing her spine to the wall. Her apartment felt wrong again. The air was heavier, like someone had closed every vent, every door, every escape, and left her in a box with no oxygen. She looked around. The mirrors were gone. All of them. Not just the bathroom one, but every single reflective surface. Her bedroom mirror, the one on her closet door, even the microwave and the black TV screen, all smooth and matte, like the reflections had been erased completely. Then, from the corner of her vision, she caught movement, not outside, not in the room, inside her reflection. She turned toward the window, toward the glass pane she thought was just darkened by the outside world, but it was no longer reflecting her room. It showed something else. A hallway. Flickering, lights, shadows crawling along the walls. A dozen doors, each slightly ajar, creaking softly with something breathing behind them. It wasn't a reflection. It was a view, a gateway, and from the far end of the hallway something stepped into frame. Her, again, but twisted beyond recognition. This version of Lila dragged her limbs like they were detached. Her neck lolled to the side, bones jutting beneath paper-thin skin. One eye was missing, just an empty socket leaking darkness. Her mouth moved constantly, whispering words too fast to catch, and she was coming toward the window. No, not a window. A door. Lila backed away, but the glass rippled, softly, like water, and the creature stepped closer. Each footstep seemed to echo in Lila's skull. You screamed. I heard. I came. Lila turned and ran to her bedroom, heart pounding. She needed to end it, completely. The holy water hadn't worked. Not really. It just pushed the door open wider. So she reached under her bed and grabbed the only thing she could think of, her grandmother's journal. She hadn't read it in years. It had always felt like a diary she wasn't supposed to open. But now, maybe it had answers. She flipped through pages, frantically scanning the lines. Most of it was scribbled nonsense, ramblings about voices, shadows, screams in silver glass. But then she saw it. If the reflection ever steps out, there's only one way to shut the gate. The source must return. Lila paused. Return to what? She whispered. She turned the page. One line stood alone. The scream must go back where it was born. Her stomach turned to stone. She understood now. It wasn't enough to destroy the mirrors. She had to go back, into the mirror. The scream wasn't a curse laid on her, it was her, something she'd created and abandoned when she was a child. All the fear, the pain, the helplessness she pushed down into silence. It had formed something real. And now, that thing wanted back in. But maybe, just maybe, if she gave herself to it, if she faced it completely instead of running, maybe it would stop. She stood slowly, walking toward the window. The reflection had changed again. Now it mirrored her apartment. Perfectly. Except for one thing. In the reflection, she was smiling, standing in the same spot, facing the glass, waiting. Lila reached out. Her fingers touched the glass. It rippled. And then, she stepped through, crossing. The mirror felt like falling without motion. Lila's body didn't move, but her mind tumbled forward through a place without time or sound. For a split second, she felt everything. Every scream ever swallowed, every tear never seen. every fear buried so deep it forgot its own name. It wasn't just hers, it was everyone's. And then she landed, not with a thud, not with pain, just stillness. She stood in a perfect replica of her apartment, but hollow, lifeless, colorless, like the blueprint of a memory never finished. The walls were ash gray, the lights buzzed low and cold. The air felt thick, like she was breathing through, 'cause then she saw her. Across the room, the other Lila stood waiting, but she looked different now. Not a monster, not twisted or broken. She looked exactly like Lila. Same eyes, same blood on the cheek, same hoodie, same pain. They stared at each other in silence. Finally, the other one spoke. "You left me." Lila swallowed hard. "I didn't know I did." I screamed. "You pretended. You didn't hear." "I was scared. I was you." Lila stepped forward slowly, heart thudding in her chest. "Then why did you try to destroy me?" The other Lila didn't blink. "I didn't. I tried to wake you up." She lifted her hand, and Lila saw that her fingers were glowing. Dim, silver light pulsed beneath the skin, like trapped lightning, begging to be released. "I carried everything you wouldn't," she said, "and now you have to take it back." Lila shook her head. "I can't. It's too much. I'm not strong enough." The other her tilted her head, a strange softness in her eyes now. "Then you'll die here, and I'll live in your place." Hollow and cold, forever repeating the scream. Behind her, the apartment began to split. Cracks in the ceiling. Walls, bleeding shadows. A soundless roar tearing through the air. This was the mirror world collapsing, and only one could leave. Lila stepped forward. She reached out, trembling. "What if we stop pretending we're different?" The other Lila blinked, and then she smiled, for the first time, not twisted, not mocking, just sad. They touched hands, and the world exploded in light. When Lila opened her eyes again, she was back, in her apartment, on the floor, right where she had stood before stepping through the glass. The window reflected her face. Only her face. No smiles, no scream, just her. The air felt lighter, real. The colors had returned. She stood slowly, as if rising out of something heavy that had clung to her bones for years. Every mirror in the apartment was gone. The mirror world had closed. The scream had gone home. She walked to the bathroom. The frame where the mirror once hung was now empty wood. But she looked anyway, just to be sure. No reflection stared back. Just a wall. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply whispered, "Thank you." That night she slept without hearing a sound. No whispers, no cries, no screams. But just before the sun rose, in the final second of night, the glass of her phone flickered, just once, a flash of her face, screaming, "The end."